Chapter 9. The Woman I Love. A few days later Mr. Churchill came to see Edward at Buckingham Palace. At first, the king was quiet. Then he said, "This is my last night in England, Winston. I love this country. I wanted to be a modern, kind king. I wanted to change the world, but they stopped me, and now I have to leave." It was 10 o'clock. Edward stood up and walked over to the window. In the dark streets below there were hundreds of people. They were singing and calling his name. "Edward, Edward, we love Edward," they shouted. "Long live the king, long live love." "But the people love you," Winston Churchill said, "and they want Wallis to be queen." Suddenly the king turned to Mr. Churchill. "Why is this happening to me, Winston?" he cried. "What have I done wrong?" He sat down and put his head in his hands. There was a silence in the room, but through the open window came the shouting from the street. "Long live Edward, long live love. Long live Edward, long live love." Mr. Churchill came over and put his hand on the king's arm. Edward looked up. "Thank you, Winston," he said. "You are a good friend to me." "Thank you, sir. And you were a good king." At 10 o'clock the next morning, the telephone rang in Edward's bedroom. "They're ready for you now, sir," a voice said. The king walked slowly down the stairs. In front of him, there was an open door. The family were waiting for him. His mother sat near the window, dressed in black. His brother stood beside her. How close they are, the king thought. On a small table in the center of the room, there was a piece of paper. Edward sat down and read these words. "I, Edward VIII, King of Great Britain, King of India, King of Australia, King of New Zealand, King of Canada, King of Kenya, King of Nigeria, King of Burma, King of Malaya, King of Singapore, and King of 32 other countries, have today given the crown to my brother George. God be with him and all his people. The 10th of December 1936. Edward took a pen and wrote his name at the bottom of the page. Then he stood up and kissed his brother's hand. "I never wanted this to happen," George said. "This is the worst day of my life." Edward walked over to his mother. "Before I kiss you," she said, "there are some things that I want to say. I have never understood you, child. This morning you were a king, but tonight, you'll run from England like a thief, alone, angry, afraid. You think that you're free, but you're not. You cannot be free. I love you. I am your mother and nothing can change that. But if you marry that woman, you will break my heart. Everyone needs their family. Everyone needs their home. And tonight you have lost both those things. I love you. I am your mother and nothing can change that. But if you marry that woman, you will break my heart. Go now. It is all very sad." Edward kissed Queen Mary's hand. Then he turned and walked away. The next day Edward returned to Windsor Castle. He went into a small, cold room at the top of the building. "Earlier today I gave the crown to my brother George. He is now your king." From there, he spoke on BBC radio to Britain and the world. This is what he said. "Tonight, for the first time, I can say a few words to you. Earlier today, I gave the crown to my brother George. He is now your king. I will soon leave this country and travel to France. My heart is with Wallis and I cannot live without the woman I love. I don't know what will happen to me. Perhaps I will never see England again. But think of me tonight when I sail across the sea. God be with you. Long live King George." Edward left Windsor Castle and got into a large black car. It was now midnight, and it was just beginning to rain. "Take me away as quickly as you can," he said. The car moved off into the darkness and the rain. "What a night," said the driver. "I think the sky is crying, sir." At 1:30 a.m. they arrived at Portsmouth. Edward got out of the car and a voice said, "The king is here." Edward stopped and looked out across the open sea. There was a thin, cold smile on his face. "King," he said. "No, I am not the king. I am just a man in love." Then he turned and walked onto the ship and into the night.